Heroes of Fantasy Football podcast.
Welcome back, everyone. We are the Heroes of Fantasy Football podcast. I'm your host, Matt High, and we have Chris with me as well. This is part 2 of our preseason topic show. We're going to look at a couple more topics that we want to discuss and get our points of view on and see where we stand. So without further ado, let's just dive right into it here. Last show, we talked about all the running backs in the backfields we want. We're going to talk about some wide receiver rooms that we're targeting. And let's start off with the hot one. Texans wide receivers. CJ Stroud, rookie quarterback last season, showed he can play ball. And fast forward to this year, now we have Nico Collins, Stephon Diggs through a trade, and Tank Dell, who was drafted last year. So looking at their ADPs right now, we have Nico Collins at the wide receiver 13, 30th overall. Stephon Diggs is the wide receiver 18, 38th overall. And then Tank Dell is the wide receiver 29 at 65th overall. Now, I know where I stand, and I want to know where you stand first. Which one of these wide receivers, if you had to choose at draft cost, which one are you willing to take a shot on?
This is really tough. This one's really, really hard. I like all three of them for all different reasons, actually. This is probably, if I'm being honest with you, I believe in the last episode I had mentioned that I don't want to take any of the Dolphins running back room because I don't like either of them. I think there's too much risk involved between Achane being too high and Mostert possibly going, he's getting old and whatnot. The opposite applies here. All three of these players are good enough to be in the number one, and I couldn't possibly tell you who's going to end up being there. So I would honestly actually make this decision as the season gets closer. If I'm being complete, this would definitely be like a week before a decision for me. But if you sat there, you put me down, and you told me, Chris, choose now, which is kind of what you're doing to me. Not cool, bro. I would probably have to go, I think, with Nico Collins. I think that's where I stand. I have fears of the Stephon Diggs age to a certain extent, but also, he's also Stephon Diggs. I don't know if the one bad season is indicative of the rest of his career or if there really was just a strong disconnect. Something happened. I'm not sure. But it's hard to kind of put him in that role. And Tank Dell, I don't think he's bad. I think, he might end up being a Jalen Waddle. He could also end up being the number one on the team. I feel like there's a higher chance of him being like a Jalen Waddle type player, the number two behind whoever else is there. He's also young, which also helps his kind of prospects there. But yeah, I think definitely Nico Collins is where I'm leaning.
That is where I lean as well. So I want to say you are correct in doing that.
I didn't realize that you were the mixed master. Your trophy's right there.
It's fine. Like I said, I won the first one, so I'm good. It's been a little bit.
Oh, he won one that was like 5 years ago. That's crazy. No.
I think we're on 6, but still, I don't care.
It's fine. When you're not helping yourself.
The first name on there is all that matters. But with Nico Collins, I think he's the right pick because look at what he was able to do last season with CJ Stroud. Now, some of those came when it was Tank Dell being injured, and I understand that. But at the same time, Nico Collins played out of his freaking mind, and it was absolutely amazing. So I know he didn't finish. I think he finished as the wide receiver 11, I believe, last season. But going at this cost, I just don't. Stephon Diggs is the one that I'm not willing to take a shot on at all. I'm going to have him in 0 fantasy leagues this year because I think last season was telling. He's an aging wide receiver who is now on his 3rd team. He forced his way out pretty much in 2 of those teams, and they phased him out of the Bills offense last year. that's not nothing. He had Josh Allen throwing him the ball. And at one point, they were like, yeah, that's happening too much. Throw to other people, or instead, go run the ball and don't throw it to him. He lost so many people championships last year because you were still starting him because it's Stephon Diggs. You kind of have to. And now he's going on to a new team on a team that has CJ Stroud. Yes, I think he's competent enough of a quarterback to sustain 2 to 3 wide receivers for fantasy. But I'm not willing to take the shot on an aging wide receiver switching teams this late in his career on a team that already has 2 wide receivers that the quarterback has already shown rapport with. And to draft him as the wide receiver 18, I think he finishes outside the top 25, to be honest.
Okay.
So I'd much rather take the shot at Tank Dell. Now, he's coming off that ankle injury. He broke his ankle on that weird goal line blocking play that made no sense whatsoever, but it happened. So I think he might start off a little bit slower, but let's not forget the run he had. He was winning people weeks left and right because he was that good. So I think this is a team that is going to take a step forward in year 2 with everyone together. And I'd rather take the shot on Nico or Tank Dell a little bit later. But Stephon Diggs to me is not someone I'm looking to acquire at all. I know you're kind of you're with Diggs. You're not as low on Diggs as I am, are you?
No, I think he might be a little like overvalued to it. Like that, I can agree upon 100%. But I get why. I mean, it's Stephon Diggs. I understand why he would be valued in such a way. But I think like I wouldn't draft him at that place. I just don't know. Like it's just hard for me to like decide who's going to be the number one because I can see the value in all three. And this is like I said, I would need like if you wanted like a concrete like Chris, who are you picking if any, right? You got to ask me like a week before all the drafts begin because I couldn't do it right now. There's not enough information. I would need something more solidified. This is like it's literally one of those rooms where it's like any one of them could, in all honesty, like this it can and you might miss out on it, so you're always
Yeah.
taking a risk here, which is why I said like this would be like I don't know if I would take one of them because if I don't get that answer by the time of my redraft drafts, like I would rather take something more solidified than something I could just get messed up on because I didn't know who was going to be number one. It's a weird situation to be in. It doesn't usually occur. The only other time I can think of a situation close like this was the Buccaneers. You have Mike Evans,
Chris
Antonio
Godwin.
Brown, and Chris Godwin. Thank you. That's what I was trying to think. Right, while Antonio Brown was a lot lower on the list for people, and it was more Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, right? They ended up all three being fantastic that year under Tom Brady. And truthfully, like I was convinced they went out there and Tom Brady went, eeny, meeny, miny, mo, you're the number one wide receiver this week. While
It did
all
feel
three were
like
playing
that.
for them. No, it did. It was
Yeah.
insane. It was insane. So
I
that's
want to play a quick game with you. Ready?
oh no.
We're gonna play
Okay.
keep trade cut. Okay.
Oh no.
These are a couple. I'm gonna group them all kind of together.
Okay.
Debo Samuel, Stephon Diggs, Cooper Cup. Keep trade cut.
Okay.
You want me to go first?
No, I don't want that
What
to
do you
sway
got?
my decision. I will keep Debo. I will trade Cup. I will cut Diggs. I think I will keep Debo because I am full in belief at the current moment that there will someone I have a feeling is going to end up getting traded, and I hope that Debo. If Debo gets traded, I hope it's to a good team, and if he doesn't get traded, and Ayuk gets traded, that's awesome for me. He becomes the dedicated wide receiver on that team. I'm trading Cup because I think there's more value there. There's less competition in the wide receiver room. He's also Cooper Cup. There is more of in a sense, pedigree of the chemistry and whatnot. I feel like I could sell him better. So in this scenario, because I have to choose three, I think I'm going to have to cut Stephon Diggs here.
Okay. Yeah, I'm cutting Stephon Diggs right there. I'm keeping Cooper Kupp.
There is no,
Yeah.
nope, no discussion. He's done. Nope.
Diggs is done.
Goodbye.
I'm trading Debo and I am keeping Cooper Kupp. So, but yeah, I guess the moral of this discussion is just draft CJ Stroud because he gets everybody. No matter who he throws the ball to, they should be able to catch it, and it's got to go through him.
Hypothetically, of course.
Yes. Yeah. All right, let's go up here to the next wide receiver room because I know this is not going to be a sexy team. We're just going to put that out there now.
No,
We're
not
talking
at all.
about the New England Patriots. But before you sign off, the Patriots wide receiver room has sucked for years. But now it's a different coach, different quarterback, different overall philosophy. So I think there is value that's going to be on this team. It just depends on which one it is. They're all going pretty late. So it's a shot in the dark that you'll know week 1 or 2 and you can dump one of these guys if they're not the right one. But if you do get them where they're going, where they're being drafted, they could be a bye-week replacement flex, possibly a trade piece later in the season. So there's a big group here because there's a lot of guys. So we're gonna go through a couple of them. Jalen Polk, wide receiver 73. His ADP is 206th overall. Demario Douglas, wide receiver 74, 207th overall. Javon Baker, wide receiver 88, and 271st overall. And then two other guys, Kendrick Bourne and KJ Osborne, wide receiver 96 and 98, 293rd and 305th overall. If you had to take a shot on one of these guys to be the wide receiver 1 on the Patriots offense, which guy are you putting the chips in on?
Before I say my decision, I just wanna make it very clear. While I don't know 100%, it's very hard to guess because, as you said, they've sucked in that wide receiver department for so long. The new quarterback is coming in. There's a lot of questions on what's gonna happen there. This is actually probably where this might be like the best part right here, right? If you get lucky, we got to remind ourselves this is luck, which is a lot of most fantasy championships are won in luck one way or another.
I'd like to think skill.
There is skill.
There's skill to be
There is
lucky.
skill. Exactly. It's how you control in a sense your luck by taking your variables, your contingencies. You plan for what could happen, and this is doing exactly that. All these wide receivers, ADP is after the 200 mark. You're going to have a day picking one of these, and you're going to have to just kind of guess and choose. You're going to get lucky. And if one of them ends up being the highest one here is 73. If that person ends up being in the top 32, you win. You win by a landslide. If that person goes with the top 25, all of a sudden that's your fringe flex pick, second flex, perhaps your wide receiver 2 for a late bye week into the season. Who knows? I don't. For me personally, if I had to choose right now, I'm between Polk and Douglas. It's honestly, I know they're like the top 2, and I think that's for a reason. I think Polk is the funnier one because he is obviously the rookie coming into this, but I'm definitely between the two of them. I don't know, but once again, that's very fringe, but that's the best part about this, right? When you go into it and you have all the options laid out in front of you, I'm definitely going to take one of them. If I have the opportunity and I see, oh yeah, I feel confident this could maybe work, that's when you do it. 100%. What about you? What do you think?
For me, I agree with Demario Douglas. I'm between him and Javon Baker because I think those guys profile as target earners, and I like watching their tape. I liked what I saw last year with Pop Douglas. I think he did pretty well on that offense, and it was an awful offense. So the fact that he was able to do anything on it was pretty eye opening to me. And now like I said at the top, it's a completely different offense. There's a new quarterback, new coach, just new everything. So right now, because their ADP is so low, it's a lot because we're just sick of getting burned in drafts. We're just like, you know what, these guys, I don't care what happens, just bury them underneath the stadium so we don't have to draft them at all. But here we are. There's going to be value. Now, is it going to be Drake May or Jacoby Brissett? Maybe we'll talk about that in a little bit.
Stay tuned.
But I think either way, one of these guys is going to, cream rises to the top. So if one of these guys shows up, despite how we view them ADP wise, they're going to see targets. They're going to earn the trust of the quarterback and the coaching staff, and they're going to show up on the NFL football team, and they're going to be doing things, and they're any stats they make are going to help you out in fantasy. Now, I don't expect any one of these guys to just be a Puka Nakua of last year's, where they're just dominant every week, but there's something to be said about a guy that's drafted this late that is basically, it's a free chip you get to place on any part of the board, and it's got a shot at being something that can pay off for you. So I think this is going to be a good team to target because of how low we're drafting them.
Yeah, I just before we go any further, I just wanted to say one more thing, right, in regards to this conversation, right? We have to remember, I mean, you mentioned Puka Nakua, right? There are other examples. I'm going through the catalog right now. Yeah, I mean, the other one. So there, everyone remembers Puka Nakua, but if we remember the Puka Nakua before him, right? It was none other than Amon-Ra St. Brown. Amon-Ra St. Brown, his rookie year, wide receiver 67, pick 194 off the board, and now look, you could never imagine that, So I'm not saying it's going to happen. Also, this is when people thought, were questioning Jared Goff as well. I'm not saying that that's going to happen here, but I am so willing to take that risk. Like, this is the risk I'm willing to take, because I'm also like, this is a low risk, possibly high reward scenario. You don't get those too often. I would definitely take advantage of this.
Agreed. So why don't we go into our quarterback discussion now? We're looking at teams that have some quarterback controversies. We'll say there's a lot of different people saying it's this guy, it's that guy. So we're gonna see where me and Chris think of these teams. So let's start off with the Vikings.
Okay.
It's a battle between JJ McCarthy, the newly drafted rookie in this year, and Sam Darnold. Hopefully he's going through the car wash and maybe he's good. Where do you stand? Week one, let's give week one starter. And at one point during the season, do you think it'll change? And if so, when do you think that is? So who do you think first? Week one, who's suiting
Personally,
up?
I actually think week one it's currently 50-50. I've heard a lot of good things about JJ. Uh, I don't know if the Vikings want to run that out too soon. It's a little early to be seen. I imagine we'll see a lot more going into preseason when that happens. However, if Sam Darnold were to start week one, hypothetically, that does not last more than like 3 weeks at best. Like, he gets replaced before their bye week, in my opinion. I've seen enough good things like come out from the JJ McCarthy camp that I'm willing to bet that they want to get him going as fast as possible, probably knowing that there will be growing pains, there are going to be issues, but they also, we got to remember who's on their team: Hawkinson, McCarthy. Uh, Justin Jefferson, obviously JJ McCarthy. Like, there is a lot of talent there. In a sense that they kind of want to utilize while they're, you know, especially Jefferson while he's in his prime. So they don't want to waste too much time. And unfortunately, I feel as if Darnold would be the waste of too much time. Uh, if they kept him in too long. So I have a feeling they're going to rush out McCarthy. 50-50 on who starts week 1, but by week 3, McCarthy's in there.
See, right now I'm looking at it a little bit differently. I think Sam Darnold will be the starting quarterback for the Vikings week 1, but I do think he will last a little bit longer. I know he has Justin Jefferson. He's got Jordan Addison, unless there's any suspensions that come from the team or the NFL this season. Still undecided right now. I haven't really heard too much news about that. But at the same time, TJ Hawkinson is coming off a major knee injury, tearing his ACL. He's going to be on PUP, and I don't think he starts the season. So if he's on PUP during the regular season, he's going to miss the first 6 games. So for me, I'm thinking what they're going to do is they're going to put out Sam Darnold until at least the Vikings bye week, which is in week 6. Try to get all the pieces together. That way they set up JJ McCarthy for success. I don't think they want to start him off on the wrong foot with not all of his weapons. Because if, let's just say, Jordan Addison does get suspended for some point of the season, early in the season, it's Justin Jefferson, and that's really your only pass catcher. Is that really what you want to do with a rookie quarterback that hasn't had a lot of tread on the tires, where he's had a lot of experience passing the ball because he came from an offense that he didn't really need to? They were just that good at running the ball, where he was good when he had to do it, but he wasn't really relied upon to do it at the level I think he's going to have to do it at the NFL. So that's where I'm thinking Sam Darnold's going to be the starter for the first 6-7 weeks. As everyone gets healthy and the pieces come back and work together in practices, then they're going to make the switch, and it's going to be JJ McCarthy the rest of the way, which I think, in my opinion, that would be the smartest thing to do, because it really it builds up the team to know this is going to be the guy, but go work out some of the kinks in the offense, because they lost Kirk Cousins. They're not going to be able to do the same things that they did with him with either one of these quarterbacks. So I think this is where it's going to be one of these quarterback battles that it doesn't really matter, because you're still going to draft Justin Jefferson because he's really good at football. No matter who's throwing him the ball, he's going to be open and he's going to do great things just like he always does. It's the ancillary pieces around whoever is the quarterback that I don't think are going to be fully developed to make a really smart decision. So does that make sense, Chris?
I don't disagree with the line of thinking at all. I don't disagree with it at all. I just don't think that's going to happen. Personally, I from a football GM point of view, I feel like it's what should happen. I just have a weird feeling that someone's going to make a dumb move and try to push this kid too early. That's where I'm at currently. So I don't dislike your thinking. I just have a feeling that's not what's going to happen.
All right, so let's move on to the next quarterback battle. We have the Pittsburgh Steelers. They traded for Justin Fields from the Bears this offseason, and they also brought in Russell Wilson. Now, we have seen the Russell Wilson experience in Denver the past 2 seasons, and I'm sorry for the past 2 years of having to watch that, because it was not fun. That doesn't also mean that Justin Fields was any better, because he really wasn't. He's shown flashes. We know he has talent, but he just makes boneheaded decisions. And he's not, it doesn't seem like he was really set up for success in Chicago, but a lot of it was he was just making poor reads and holding on to the ball way too long. Now, he goes to a team who the head coach is Mike Tomlin, and I don't think he's going to take any of that. He's going to basically lay down the law, because Mike Tomlin is, I would say he's a top 5 NFL coach of all time, because look at what he's been able to do. He gets the most out of his players. He's probably going to finish 500, because that's just what he does. Doesn't matter who's playing the ball. So do you stand on the Russell Wilson side or Justin Fields? Now, their bye week is in week 9, so it's middle of the season. For me, I think Russell Wilson starts for 5 to 6 weeks, and then they're going to try out Justin Fields, but I think they're going to end up going back to Russell Wilson. Because I don't think Fields is going to have the juice and what they're looking for. I think they're going to lose too many games, and they're going to have to go back to Russell Wilson.
See, so this is a really, really weird scenario. These quarterbacks are just so different that, like, I feel like switching from one to the other is almost out of the question unless you're losing every game or an injury occurs. Like, they are just so different. However, I will say, so I'm looking at the stats from last year from Russell Wilson. Yeah, they're not perfect. Of course, there are times where you wish that he did a little better. However, he did finish as the quarterback 14 last season, and that's with him missing 2 games. So all I'm gonna say is that, yeah, sure, it wasn't great, and of course there were definitely there's a lot of painful moments under Sean Payton. I will say that his stats weren't that bad. They're serviceable. I mean, you look at some other quarterbacks during. I mean, we talk about Kirk Cousins. He has the serviceable year and then the really good year. Serviceable, really good. He kind of rotates on that. I'm not saying it's going to happen to Russell Wilson, but if he's serviceable to a certain extent, wins games, he might lose some to a certain extent. I don't see why the Steelers, who traditionally try and work through patches and they try to, find ways to overcome certain challenges. I mean, like, look how long they stuck with Kenny Pickett and try to work through that. I don't see why they would compromise that sort of mentality for Justin Fields, who, yeah, he's younger, and yeah, there are definitely like flashes, but like, you would have to rework the offense, and I feel like this is not what they do. So I feel as if they would stick with one for most of the season over the other. Yeah, of course, if they start winning a bunch of games, losing a bunch of games. My apologies. They got to make a change. They're going to try something, but I don't foresee that happening. I think Russell Wilson will be fine. I feel like they'll do something dumb and they'll make playoffs again because it's Mike Tomlin, like you said, and he's just the guy. I think he'll be the starter for 90% of the season. Maybe he'll sit out a game or two. Maybe if they're locked in the playoffs, he'll sit out a game with Justin Fields play. But maybe there's a blowout win. They don't want him to play anymore. I don't know. But I don't foresee him not being the starter at all, personally.
So this is where the Steelers are very smart. Now, looking at Russell Wilson's contract, he only signed a 1-year deal with the
I-
Steelers.
For like a
You
one
know where
point
I'm going.
something million. Yeah.
$1.2 million that the Steelers are paying him. That's league minimum for the quarterback. But that that comes at the expense of the Broncos, who are obligated to pay him a $38 million salary for this season, which was guaranteed on the 5-year deal he signed when he went over there. So he's playing for
Free,
nothing.
basically. Yeah.
On the
You know
Steelers.
what's crazy? This could be funny enough, and we almost never see this. I'm not saying this was going to happen, but all he has to do is just be successful and make playoffs, and instantaneously, this could be a rare opportunity that you see. Like, we have like the Brock Purdy's, the CJ Strouds, where it's like people on like rookie contracts and they're super cheap, and the team can take liberties and they find an expense elsewhere. I'm not saying it's going to happen here, but it could be a very similar scenario where you're a $1.2 million contract guy. Now, obviously, next year might be a different story because this is a 1-year deal, but who knows, right? Who knows? Like, I totally see where you're coming from. Like, he's playing for nothing. Why not take the risk? It's a fantastic risk to take.
Yeah, and the way they're set up is he brings experience, whether it's good experience or bad experience. That's kind of up to them to decide based on the last 2 seasons. Are we getting Seahawks Russ or are we getting Broncos Russ? Because they're two different quarterbacks. But then you also bring in this kid who has shown flashes. If he can kind of hone in on some of the different skills that it takes to be a successful NFL quarterback, why not take the risk and
Mhm.
pay this other veteran to train him up? And then you make the decision at the end of the year. All right, is Russ cooked? Because he kind of looked that way? Or are we going to take a shot on this other kid and sign him to a deal? Either way, I don't think it really matters too much because I think, George Pickens should be okay. I'm starting to come around on George Pickens. My journey with him has been a little bit rough and patchy, but I'm starting to come around. So we'll see. All right, our final quarterback room that we were going to talk about this evening is that of the New England Patriots. Similar discussion that we had before with the wide receivers. One of these guys is going to be someone that can provide those players with fantasy relevance. So, where do you see Drake May and Jacoby Brissett?
This is a really, really interesting time for the Patriots because I'm hearing a lot of people like Jacoby, which is so insane to hear. Now he's slated to be the week 1 starter, and I understand where they're coming from. I've heard there are developmental issues with Drake May into that offense. I guess that just feels so insane to me. But yeah, I think as of right now, I'm leaning towards Jacoby being the week 1 starter. I'm gonna lean on the side of where he was in the Vikings, though. I don't foresee him staying there for too long. I think the reason because why I don't see that is I feel like the Patriots do not want a Mac Jones situation. They want to know as soon as possible, is this the guy that we can develop, that we can count on? Like, what's the deal here? Like, what are we actually getting ourselves into? And unfortunately, you're not going to get that until you play a game with that person. Scrimmages are great. Preseason might be a good determining factor of it, but in reality, your NFL start is where it's going to be. They're going to probably actually, you know what? Let me look. Hold on, one second. I'll actually give you a week. I'm going to give you a week. Here, give me 2 seconds. Like, let's see, Drake
While
May.
you're doing that, I'll jump in here.
Go ahead.
So
Yeah, go for it.
I really liked Drake May in the draft process this year. He was one of the guys I was pretty high on, and let's not pretend that all of the quarterbacks this year did not have any warts. Like none of them are slam dunk prospects. I know some people are like, "Oh, Caleb was the best since Andrew Luck," and we hear that every year. And there's guys that struggle. College ball and NFL ball are completely different things. There's going to be a learning curve. So I do think that Jacoby Brissett is probably going to take over, starting duties for the first couple weeks of the season, but I do think this is ultimately going to be a team that is going to want their guys to play together. And Jacoby Brissett is not the future. It's Drake May. So they invested a high draft pick in Drake May. So they're going to want to get him started sooner than later. So I would say the first 3 weeks or so, probably going to be Jacoby Brissett. If he struggles, all right, now justify making the selection, switching over the offense to Drake May. So what week are you deciding?
Yeah, so I got the schedule right here. So week 1 they're against Cincinnati. If we're on board with the Jacoby Brissett train, obviously he's not going to start that week. Week 2 is against Seattle. That's a decent week. I know they're not the worst defense. They're definitely not the best. The next 2 weeks are brutal in the Jets and the Niners. You don't want that being your testing ground, in my
Those are
opinion.
good defenses.
Yeah, so if you're gonna hold out for Seattle, you're holding out for also those two. If that's what unless if you really want to torture him, and you want to see what he likes under the pressure, I guess. But I don't think that's gonna be the case. Besides that, your next challenge is then Miami. I could see them going for Miami at week 5. If not week 5, definitely week 6 against Houston, like 100%. So it's either 2-5.
Houston has a scary defense. They're gonna
They do. I just
made
think
some
that the Jets
upgrades.
and Niners are a little
Oh
more
yeah,
terrifying.
yeah,
Personally. So
and you
I
should be
feel like
terrified of them.
yes, 100%. I feel like if you're not going to put him in week 2 against the Seahawks and seeing how that rides through the difficult times, you should just wait until that's all done and when you get to Miami or Houston and just go from there. Because after Houston, you go back to Jacksonville, then you have the match against the Jets again, right? You can see how he does in terms of that turmoil. Then he goes against Tennessee and Chicago. So there's definitely like a front loaded, like if you're waiting for a good couple weeks to make sure you get through so he has time to adjust. However, as you said, they want them to play together. They're a little desperate. They need something going. I could see them starting him week 2. I'm gonna go with that. I'm gonna go week 2. I'm gonna go with Jacoby Brissett. Does okay, but doesn't win against the Bengals, and that's just gonna cause him to do the switch. And that's what I'm gonna go with. And he'll probably do okay against Seattle. He'll do horrible against the Jets and Niners, and then gets better from there. Hopefully, hypothetically speaking. But yeah,
All right.
that's what I'm gonna go with.
Yeah, I mean, looking at the schedule that you just listed off, I think week 5 is probably realistic, if not
Yeah.
week 1. I mean, that's still in the realm of outcomes. They could just
It is
say,
100%.
"Yep, you're our week 1 starter. Get out there and go chuck that rock." But I think they're going to bring him on a little bit slower. So week 5, I think, would be a good position to start. So, but yeah, those are the quarterback battles we were discussing. So, as always, please follow the show. We are on YouTube at youtube.com/@theheroesff. You can follow the show on X @theheroesff as well. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, basically everywhere you find your podcast, we're there. It'd be great if you guys can leave a comment on which one of these wide receivers we discussed and which quarterbacks. Leave us comments on what you think. We want to know. We want to hear from the listeners. So we'll keep things rolling out here. But if you have any questions, please send us a message. We're always available. And until next time, we'll see everyone later. So long.
Thank you again for tuning in to another episode of the Heroes of Fantasy Football podcast. Follow us on Twitter @TheHeroesFF.